Welcome, Rotaractors, Rotarians, and friends to the lightning talk session of RotarActs of Kindness. In this session, there will be 5 different speakers giving a lightning talk or a story that is approximately 10 minutes long. Each one is unique, entertaining, and inspiring. All proceeds from the RotarActs of Kindness session will support Rotary's Disaster Response Fund. It has been proven time and time again that the Rotary family is available whenever and wherever help is needed. From the recent explosion in Beirut, our current COVID-19 relief efforts, to our decades-long assault on polio, we respond quickly, efficiently, and with care. The Rotary family also plans ahead so that we have the resources necessary to react when disaster strikes. As we all know, the Rotary Foundation is the backbone of our ability to be sustainable for future generations. It is so important that Rotaractors and Rotarians come together to support the future of our organization and through that, the future of our planet. With RotarActs' elevated status within Rotary International comes an elevated responsibility to give back. The support and encouragement of Rotarians will help this transition be smooth, meaningful, and impactful. We are so excited that in July of 2021, our 7th area of focus, supporting the environment, will make its debut. As Rotaractors, we feel it is important to focus on immediate needs in tandem with ensuring a habitable planet for future generations. As we prepare to welcome this new area of focus and invest in our future, we want to ensure that the Disaster Response Fund is well positioned to be put into use when we need it most. Thank you again for your generosity. We think these sessions will far surpass the donated amount in fun and quality. If you agree and would like to further support these efforts through increasing your gift and sharing with others, the Raise for Rotary link is open until June 1st and is being placed in the chat right now. Please note that donations on Raise for Rotary count towards all donor recognition opportunities offered by RI. They are functionally the same as any gift to the Rotary Foundation. We know you will enjoy these incredible speakers, but first, let's go over a couple of housekeeping comments. Please note that this session is being recorded. You have all been muted, and we request that you stay on mute to ensure no background noise interferes with the presentation. Please make sure you are in speaker view for the best experience during the forum. All speaker bios can be found in the Ascension Rotaract Network conference website where you completed your registration. For this session, we have 5 incredible speakers who will each be sharing a unique 10-minute story with us while you sit back, relax, and enjoy. Our first speaker is Nathan Thomas. Nathan Thomas lives in Raleigh, North Carolina with his wife, Rachel, and works as an engineering team leader for Leone Wiring Systems. His Rotary journey started at age 16 when he founded an international service nonprofit, All We Are, which was supported by the Cincinnati, Ohio Rotary Club, of which I know we have at least one member in the chat or in the room right now. This partnership has resulted in 39 solar installations at health centers and boarding schools around Uganda, impacting over 40,000 people. In 2016 to 2017, Nathan served as club president of the Rotary Club of Raleigh Midtown, becoming one of the youngest in Rotary International's history. Nathan will serve as district governor for District 7710 in the 2022-2023 Rotary year, at age 29. Without further ado, please join me in warmly welcoming Nathan Thomas.
Thank you so much, Allie, for the warm introduction. Greetings, Rotary and Rotaract family around the world. As the first speaker of this session, I'd like to take a moment and express thanks to RI President Holger for creating space to build meaningful connections with Rotarians and Rotaractors during these 3 presidential conferences. I'd like to extend thanks to the entire Ascension MDIO, who are just so impressive in their leadership of this event. And as these are RotarActs of Kindness, I'll be sharing how Rotarian kindness in the first 3 chapters of my life helped shape me into the person I am today. Insights from my past, present, and future. Some call millennials the purpose generation, an idealistic crowd that grew up with technology and belief that the primary purpose of business should be improving society instead of generating profits. We've also been called worse things. As a member of this purpose generation, I found myself in 2009 as a 16-year-old high school student who wanted to make the world a better place. I was a first-generation American living in a small town in northwestern Ohio. Where to start? What do I do? How do I do it? And what was certain was that I had zero connections. My parents are from southern India and gave me this incredible gift of education. I wanted to help give that gift to others, and I believe the best way to do that is to leverage my passions and interests for good. Well, in 2009, 16-year-old Nathan was a nerd who liked to build computers. I thought, computers are such a big part of my education. What if I ask people in my community to donate computers? I'll fix them up and send them to a community in need. But where? I had spent some time in Kerala, India with my relatives, but I wanted to help communities that needed it the most, even if they were less familiar to me. So I did what any millennial would do. I Googled. I emailed hundreds of nonprofit organizations sharing my idea, and luckily one organization responded. They worked in this faraway place called Uganda. I didn't even know where Uganda was on the map. I collected the computers, I updated them, and needed to raise money for shipping. And that was when one of my high school advisors said, "Well, Nathan, have you thought about talking to Chuck Stump? He's a member of the local Rotary Club." At that moment in 2009, that's when I learned about Rotary for the first time. The Findlay Rotary Club taught me kindness in a unique way. They didn't ask if I was a member of an Interact club. They supported my computer project, and later even a trip to Uganda in 2011 after my freshman year of college. That trip to Uganda was so important for me. I spent time at the school that I had sent these computers to, and I saw the incredible challenges they faced every day. Energy in Uganda was and is expensive and unreliable. I realized, what good is a computer if you can hardly afford to power it? Right then I learned the importance of asking communities how we might be helpful, rather than assuming that we know what's best. I was determined to take what I was learning in my engineering classes at the University of Cincinnati to create technical solutions that were cost-effective and sustainable. These efforts became formalized into a nonprofit organization called All We Are. I realized several classmates also were seeking purpose, and they joined our team. In early 2012, I walked into one of the Rotary Club of Cincinnati's meetings. Just like the Findlay Rotary, they were kind and welcomed me. They didn't ask if I was in RotarAct or if I knew someone in the club. They leaned in and embraced my interests. I left the meeting that day having connected with Deborah Schultz, who I'm glad is here with us today. Deborah is a long-term member of the club who agreed to have lunch with me. Deborah may not have realized what she signed up for. What started out with lunch has grown into a lasting friendship and collaboration over these past 10 years. Deborah and her club supported our work and helped me learn how to be successful with international projects. Why we start with the needs assessment, why we buy local, hire local. They taught me leadership and the power of recognition, saying thank you to people. In 2015, we launched our Solarize Uganda Now program, or SUN, with the Cincinnati Rotary Club. We had the ambitious goal of providing access to energy to 50 schools and health centers in Uganda by 2025. In this chapter of my life, Rotarians like Chuck and Deborah taught me kindness and showed me that purpose isn't just a millennial value, but rather one that connects people of all ages. The second chapter of my life is the one I'm living now. After I graduated from college in 2015, I moved to North Carolina to start my career in engineering. All We Are and our work in Uganda would continue to be important for my team. As we graduated from college and moved to different parts of the countries, we committed ourselves to continuing our mission outside of our 9-to-5s. Thanks to my close collaborations with Rotarians in Ohio, I wanted to join a Rotary Club in North Carolina. But would the Rotary clubs here be stuffy and boring for a 22-year-old? Like most young folks, I looked to optimize my opportunities. Work would take me to a smaller town about 30 miles from Raleigh. So of course, it made more sense to me to live in downtown Raleigh and commute 30 minutes to and from work every day. Well, this made looking for Rotary clubs tough. I wanted to join a Rotary club in Raleigh so I could participate in service projects on the weekends with ease. But most of the clubs met in the morning or for lunch, and my commute would make joining those clubs virtually impossible. Luckily, I met Carol Michaud, a Rotarian who established the Rotary Club of Raleigh Midtown, a club that made it possible for young people to participate in Rotary. We meet every 2 weeks at 6:30 in the evening. Carol subbed dinner for an optional glass of beer or wine. Pomp and circumstance were replaced with tangible service opportunities. Now you might think, oh yeah, we have one of those clubs in my district as well. But Carol started this in 2013. Before joining, we didn't talk about classification. I didn't need to wait weeks or even months for an invitation. I'm sure I would not be serving as district governor in 2022 if it was not for her. I may not have even been able to find a Rotary club that I could join. I joined Raleigh Midtown in August 2015, and shortly after received an email that our president-elect was relocating for work. The position was vacant, and I jumped at the opportunity. And luckily for me, my club was just as excited as I was. They believed in me at that moment. Serving as president gave me the opportunity to learn by doing, and I loved it. After my year as president, I was all in. I was excited for more opportunities in Rotary. And that's when Carol introduced me to our soon-to-be district governor, Shafi Parekh. Shafi's focus as district governor was on EGAD, diversity in ethnicity, gender, and age. The idea that at our core, our clubs should reflect our communities. I told Shafi I was interested in getting involved at the district level, and Shafi asked me to be his district membership chair. He didn't tell me, Nathan, look, here are the positions that you can do now, and here are the ones that you have to wait 10, 20 years and become a PDG first before you can consider serving in. He believed in me at that moment. District membership chair allowed me the opportunity to dig deep and learn about Rotary. I believe membership is the most important aspect of what we do. It showed me data and trend lines that don't look good for Rotary in the Western world, and it gave me an opportunity to connect with my district Rotarians uniquely. During all of this, we saw our sun project scale drastically, from 4 completed solar installations before I joined Rotary to now nearly 40 in a little over 5 years. And it wasn't easy, especially without an area for focus for our work. We did it with contributions from clubs in my district and in Cincinnati, and later from clubs all around the country. In this chapter of my life, Rotarians like Carol and Shafi have taught me that Rotary can be exciting and empowering for people of all ages, that we don't sacrifice impact or our community by being bold and different, and that kindness looks like leaning in and believing in people in that moment, in their moment. The 3rd chapter is the one to come. We have a 7th area of focus to support the environment. We're working on a global grant that will provide access to energy to thousands of people in Uganda. All We Are continues to grow and now boasts a membership of over 75 young professionals around the country, all who work closely with Rotary and have local connections to clubs. They have found the Chuck and Deborah in their community, but I'm still the only one who's joined a Rotary club. Many of the others have not yet met their Carol or Shafi. In this chapter that is to come, I believe the kindness we need will come from our young leaders in Rotary. RI leadership understands the critical role that new generations Rotarians and RotarActors play in shaping Rotary's future today. We need to make sure our club and district leaders do as well. Consult in these young leaders, believe in them, and I promise you learn from them and they'll learn from you. Last night, RI President Holger talked about the importance of this cross-generational mentorship. This is a partnership. And by the same token, new generations, Rotarians and Rotaractors must be vocal in their critique and in encouragement for a Rotary of the future. We enjoy technology, but guys, remember the horrors of dial-up or Virgin Mobile cell phones? You play a vital role in understanding what millennials and Gen Z want. As we slowly start to emerge from a global pandemic, there's no better time for us to start considering ways we can connect with our communities, both online and eventually in person. The pandemic has gotten us to slow down. People do have time. Rather than look forward to things getting back to normal, let's challenge ourselves to get to our future. There's a Nathan and an Allie in every community that would love to join Rotary. Will it be your club? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for sharing your inspiring story. Next, we have Reverend Jeanne Pupke. Jeanne is the Senior Minister of First Unitarian Universalist Church in Richmond, Virginia. The Richmond congregation's history reaches back to the First Unitarian Universalist Church, where abolition was boldly preached, and one of her predecessors was arrested as a Northern sympathizer. Her congregation are active in efforts to end racial hatred and working toward healing. Jeanne is a graduate of Meadville Lombard Theological School, which is a Unitarian Universalist seminary in Chicago. Jeanne came to ministry after a career in business, where she was a CEO in the automotive industry and a COO at a coffee company in Olympia, Washington. Please join me in warmly welcoming Reverend Jeanne.
Thank you, Allie. I want to talk to you today about the power of a third place in life. We've just finished 15 months of the deepest isolation, certainly that any of us can remember, but perhaps that the world can remember. A time when we were shut down and in isolation for long periods of time. We were in our homes, which are called first places by Ray Oldenham, a professor who spent his life analyzing where exactly do people spend their time. But our isolation and our move to things like Zoom don't necessarily help us to understand how to engage one another. Anyone feeling a little socially awkward as we come out of isolation? I hear that a lot. Let me tell you a little bit about why it's so important to have a third place. And let me tell you a little bit about why Rotary is so important in understanding how that can be. I told you that Dr. Oldenburg has three places. The first is our home. The second is our place of work, which until recently we had to go to. It's uncertain now how many of us will actually be going to work, how many days, how often, how many hours. And some of us have actually liked skipping the commute, not having to go out and find a lunch, but rather just walking down the hall. I know some of us have been stuck into tiny little desks in our bedroom with fake pictures behind us, or maybe rabbit ears. But we need to take a bit of resolve out of this great isolation and answer a question. What will we do now as we return out into the world? Will we build third places that help us grow as human beings? Let me say a little bit more. A third place is the kind of place you go to. It's near your home. It's probably a casual place. There might be some cost associated with it, but you try not to let it be too much, because a third place does best when Harry the plumber and Geraldine the business owner and the mayor and the newest graduate of the high school can hang out together and share informal conversation about things that they have in common or that they don't have in common. You see, over the past 60, 70 years, we've gone from a lot of third places, a lot of VFWs, a lot of bowling leagues, a lot of places where people would gather. And we've cut those down considerably. It turns out that people are participating a lot less often. I heard Nathan say something about that with regard to Rotary. But it doesn't have to be that way. After all, we need to have those places where we can learn to talk to people who are from all different kinds of corners of life. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I was once a Rotarian myself. I joined as the first female Rotarian in the state of Missouri. That was not an easy process, but thanks to a gentleman named Lou Leonati, I was able to join the club after a lot of conversation about whether or not it was a good idea to invite a woman. The way I came to know Lou is that I was a business person in the area, and he kindly sought me out to see how I was adjusting to my new space. Then he said, you know, I belong to the Rotary, and I think you'd be a great addition. And I knew that he was going to have to do some good talking. He arranged for me to meet with some of the gentlemen who were in the club. And ultimately, it made it possible for not just me, but other people who were different than the existing membership to join. And that's an essential skill in life, is it not? To be able to open our hearts and minds to people unlike us. According to Dr. Oldenburg, this third place is an essential place for human beings to actually learn to grow. And I think even more, to learn how it is to welcome someone into a group. You know how hard it is to walk into a room you don't know, a new job you haven't been at before, a classroom in a school you've never been a part of. You know that. And yet many of us are not intentional enough about saying to ourselves, hey, how shall I engage other people? That person looks new. That person looks like they don't know anyone here. That person seems not yet to belong. That practice that comes in the third space, that practice of reaching out to people is what we are very much missing in the larger world today. After all, people can get on planes and travel across the globe and ride for 7, 8, 12 hours in a plane and say nothing more to the person next to them than, excuse me, I have to go to the restroom. I know every once in a while I'll have an amazing conversation on a plane. Someone I did not know I had anything in common with. It just fell into our laps. And the next thing I know, I have a new friend. That literally is true. Someone who works for me today is someone I met on a journey. But the truth of what we need right now, what we want in our lives, is to transcend isolation. Even though we behave in ways that keep us tightly from talking to other people, even in lines for hours. The fact of the matter is, we human beings are social creatures who are healthier when we talk to strangers. Do you know that talking to a stranger is good for your health and happiness? In fact, not talking to others and being isolated is on the rise. Loneliness is epidemic, and in college students, it's twice as high now as it was 50 years ago. The results physically in our lives, get this, being lonely is like smoking 50 cigarettes a day in terms of its effect on our lives. You would never smoke 50 cigarettes in a day, but you might walk past strangers and never engage them in conversation. something that predicts your own happiness. Now, Rotary has something to offer this. You know how to engage in conversation. Simply this: it's important for you to say things that are true, to say things that are fair to all people who are concerned. And you know about building goodwill and friendship. You also know that it will be beneficial to everyone. So Rotary has known this for a long time. It's no secret in Rotary that you can find ways to connect with people you would not otherwise. Now, the question is, amidst all your good acts, is it possible? Could it happen that Rotary has something to teach us about the establishment of third places, where everyone is welcome, where good work can be done, where friendships can be established along the lines of fairness to others and speaking truth? That is a powerful, powerful model you folks have. I hope that you will use it as we come out of this deep isolation. We should value these spaces and invite people with a fervor to leave their first place, to leave their second place, and to step into a third place where good work is being done, from chips are being made, and maybe happiness goes up. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jeanne, for sharing with us how important third spaces are and how Rotaractors and Rotarians can be a part in ensuring that they are available to all of us. Next, we have Chris Wells. Chris Wells countered the inevitable existential graduate bothering of his 20s by founding a RotarAct club in his hometown of Market Harborough, England. Working with local Rotary, this blossomed into a new breed of contemporary RotarAct club, something that may be the future of Rotary with all the awesome do-goodery it can bring. Becoming DRR of District 1070, Chris helped to grow it even further into the future. This success was turbo-fueled in 2019 when he was invited to speak at the Rotary International Convention in Hamburg to tens of thousands of people. Recently, he became a Rotarian, as well as a Rotaractor, as well as a Paul Harris Fellow, as well as a 31-year-old. When he isn't Rotaracting, Chris develops digital content for Go Mad Thinking, which develops and shares effective thinking tools for teams, organizations, and individuals. Please join me in warmly welcoming Chris Wells.
Hi everybody. Oh, this is strange. It's really funny, right? Because I wrote that bio and I always love it every time someone else tries to read it, because like inevitable existential graduate bothering is such a pain in the backside for certain people to say. So I'm so sorry, but no, thank you. Hi, thanks for being here. I'm so grateful to be here. To be honest, I never thought I'd be a speaker, someone that speaks and does things. I still don't feel like a speaker, to be honest. I feel like I haven't got my certificate to say that I'm a speaker and that I can do things, or a leaflet explaining what I should do, which is always like quite tricky. But I want to tell you, have you ever had a bad day? One of those really bad days where like it just feels like everything's going wrong and it's just an absolute just mess of a day, and like it just becomes very overwhelming and you just want to cry all the time. And like the one time I did was a couple of years ago, and I went down to the shop. I live above a shop, which is also very helpful, and I went to get toilet paper, loo roll toilet paper. Went to go get that, and I discovered, by the way, that you don't have loo roll in the same way I do. Anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. So we were going, and I was going, and as I went down there, I wanted some eggs as well. And I was like, well, I need eggs and I need toilet paper, but then like I'd need a bag, and I forgot to bring my own bag, and I don't want to be bad for the environment. And in the UK, I brought a prop, don't worry. Like toilet paper sometimes has handles on. So like it sometimes comes out and it's got a little helpful handle to hold on. So what I did was I was like, clever Chris, what I'll do, put the eggs on top. So normally when this is full of toilet roll, it's flat. There's a flat base. Just use your imagination. And so I had all the eggs on there, flat top, brilliant. And I was walking around, and I was having one of those days, one of those bad days where I think it might have just been like a bit of anxiety, a bit about things about the world, and it was just kind of bubbling up. So I was already a bit on edge. And I'm there carrying my loo roll, toilet paper, it probably wasn't Andrex, I don't know what brand I have, it doesn't really matter. So I was going and balancing the eggs, and then the eggs fell off, and I literally got about 2 things out the flat, eggs fell off, smashed everywhere, and like that was like the minute. And that was the moment, and it was really bad, and I thought I was going to cry, and I was like, here it comes, I'm going to cry, and I was like, oh my God, the world is over, what is going on, oh my God, everything's over, and I went to start crying, and then just a random guy was walking past and went, oh, hey dude, oh, that's so bad, sorry mate, and he just started, he literally sounded that British as well, I didn't mean to put on that, he was like, oh mate, and he literally started helping, and he started picking up the eggs, and like, it instantly almost just removed all of that kind of sadness and overwhelming, and I was just like, oh, and then he's like, it's okay, don't worry, cool, I got you, mate. And he just like helped me with the eggs. We put the gross eggs in the bin, like the broken eggs in the bin, and like I then went back to my flat and I cried. But I cried in this time, instead of being overwhelmed and sad, it was more of a cry of being like, wow, people are so nice. And like that starts my theory that a tiny act of kindness, RotarActs of Kindness, of do-goodery and all things like that, is way more potent than badness. So I want to tell you, we ever had a bad year, maybe a bad 15 months of like certain kind of things going on, you know, maybe a certain COVID-19 going on and just ruining your days and just constantly barraging you, and everything you see, you're just walking down the street and it's COVID-19. You see someone in a mask, COVID-19. You put on the news, COVID-19. You go out, COVID-19. And it becomes so overwhelming. And like legit for me, it was really difficult to get out of bed sometimes, and like it was really strange. I'd never had that feeling before. I was like, why is it so hard to get out of bed? I normally am like rolling out of bed, I'm like and straight out. Not this time. And it was really difficult, and it's happened a lot, and it's happened a lot for a lot of this year, as I'm sure it is for a lot of people because of COVID-19. And the thing is, then it was like, right, what we're going to, as I'm sure you guys and people in Rotary, it's like, well, what do you do? How do we make things better? How do we go out and do this stuff? We meet in a restaurant and we ring bells and we do this. How do we do it? And then for a lot of people, it was like we started to adapt. We started going out. We started going doing different things. And not only that, I was constantly seeing the news about COVID-19, people being ugly to each other, people being horrible, people stealing toilet paper, people doing all that. And it was so overwhelming. And then what would happen is you'd go out in the street and then someone would say, you know, with a mask on, this is my pretend mask, good morning. And actually it made it feel a bit better. And you realise that constant COVID-19 is very different when you're outside and you're in the wider world. And the same as the RotarActs stuff. Originally, COVID-19, what do we do? It then became, okay, how do we adapt? We used to, in our RotarAct Club, we would run support groups for young victims of stroke. How on earth are we going to do that when everyone's in a room? For young victims of stroke, especially, they're going to be high risk. And we started doing it online, and it started going really well. And all of a sudden, actually, the club grew in membership. The support group grew in membership because more and more people do it. We started having regular meetings because more and more people wanted to get involved and wanted to help or wanted to join. And actually, then what happened was, I suddenly became a speaker and I started getting invited to go to talk to loads of other clubs and loads of other people across the world, like wirelessly over the internet. And all of a sudden that felt better as well, because I started going to these clubs and I started seeing all these acts of do-goodery, all these acts of kindness, these people being amazing and doing all this wonderful stuff. It makes you really almost forget about the COVID-19, everything's bad, everything's horrible, COVID-19, be scared of everyone, COVID-19. And then you start seeing people be kind to each other. You start seeing people actually helping each other. People raising more money and doing more service than they ever have before because they want to help. Remembering that people want to help and want to do good. And now I want to tell you about my bad brain. I have one of those bad brains where like every once in a while it gets worse and you become overwhelmed, as you may have noticed from all of these stories so far. Gets overwhelmed and things become very difficult. And out of this whole thing, I never thought once again I'd be a speaker. And then out of the blue, the very lovely kind Ali was like, hey, do you want to get involved in this? It's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. Amazing. Okay, great. Can you send me an outline? And I was like, yeah, okay. And my brain wasn't helping, and I was really struggling writing an outline, and I was really struggling writing a speech. But I'm a speaker. I have my certificate probably somewhere. It's in the post, surely. And I started feeling, oh no, I'm not a speaker. I'm not a person that's doing this. What's going on? This isn't working. What do I do? And I kept delaying it, and I kept trying to write, and I wrote notes. I've got notes here. I've got notes here. I was just like, what do I do? And once again, I was feeling overwhelmed. That sadness, that things, what do I do? How do I get through this? And then actually, another act of kindness, Ali, the most understanding human being I've ever met. Every time I write an email going, I'm so sorry for the delay. I can't, I'm a bit overwhelmed. And this, every time I got the kindest email back, the kindest piece of understanding back. It's okay, right? Just make sure you this. Here's the Zoom link. Don't forget the Zoom link. Here's the time. Don't forget the time. And I could tell sometimes, and that's like, you know, the panic that goes in the back of your mind where it's like, hey, just a gentle reminder for this. And you can tell, like, it's not just gentle reminder, it's gentle reminder. Come on, send it now. Everyone else has sent it, please. Come on, we're having a rehearsal soon. Please, come on, everybody. And like, I'm going, I'm so sorry. And it was like, and I was really struggling, and I really wanted to do this because this is as well, you may have noticed, completely different to what I normally do as a thing, but I really wanted to make it special for this. And I think part of that, you know, between COVID-19 and other things going on as well, I think it just, to be honest, just like really struggled with it. But then the kindness of Ali really helped make it better. And somehow I'm here, somehow I've written this, somehow I'm talking to you guys now and telling you this. And that's what I truly believe. It's that kindness. Because I think a single tiny act of kindness is significantly more potent than an act of ugliness. Just the overwhelming chaos and existential dread of the world right now was, and then all of a sudden the imposter syndrome and the overwhelming on that was circumvented just by a kind email from Ali. The overwhelming existential anxiety and pain of breaking my eggs on the floor, helped by just a random dude on the street being kind and helping me pick up broken eggs. Once again, that overwhelmingness, COVID-19, all of that, what do we do? That helplessness changed again just by seeing these acts of kindness, seeing what these people are doing. And it doesn't take away from the pain and the suffering and doing that, absolutely not. But it really does help make things feel a bit more manageable. And it makes things, way more digestible and dealable in the world. So then we can keep doing more things, and it snowballs and it grows. And I think it's the most important thing. So this is simultaneously my apology to Ali for constantly running her about, trying to get a nice speech to her, and a genuine piece of gratitude for just the kindness and the patience for allowing this, because that's how we get here and that's how we do this. And so, my name has been Chris Wells, and I'm genuinely grateful to be here today. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Chris. I was not expecting that at all. And also, just a little side note thing here, going off script. Earlier, when we were preparing for this, I said to him that he's so funny that every time he just goes to open his mouth, I'm already laughing before I even hear what he has to say. So thank you, Chris, for being here and for sharing your story and inspiring us to learn lessons and find the silver lining in challenging situations. So next, we have Lauren Fisher, who happens to be my sister. She is a Boston-based strategy and operations manager at Akamai Technologies, specializing in strategic communications and culture initiatives that ensure employees are engaged and informed. Lauren supports organizations that focus on ensuring young girls and women have access to resources and programs that support healthy development and open doors to new opportunities. Currently, she does this through her support of Big Sister Boston. Big Sister Boston focuses on igniting girls' passion and power to succeed through positive mentoring relationships. Throughout her time with the organization, Lauren has been matched with a young woman in the Boston area as a mentor or big sister for 7 years, and also serves on the Big Sister Boston Young Professional Board, which helps recruit other women to become mentors and support Big Sister's fundraising efforts. And she's also my big sister, and I'm only slightly jealous of her little through the program. Outside of work, Lauren enjoys reading, exercising, and trying new recipes. Please join me in warmly welcoming Lauren Fisher.
All right, thank you, Allie. It's wonderful to be here with you. I don't think we've had a speaking engagement together, so this is a first, and I'm excited. So why don't we go ahead and jump in? I'm going to tell you about something that happened to me about 7 years ago that I think many of you will be able to relate to. All right. In 2014, I was a 23-year-old recent grad in my first real job, your typical corporate 9-to-5. I was typing away on my keyboard, surrounded by the incredibly tall walls of my tiny cubicle, when my manager popped in with some feedback. Now, feedback conversations had really turned into tell Lauren everything that she's doing wrong conversations, and this one felt no different to me. I remember using the grin and bear it method to make it through and forced out a terse thanks. Then, without even a moment's notice, I picked up my phone and I sent a text message. "Christine is driving me insane," I told my work best friend. I was seeking that immediate gratification of telling someone, "You're right, that is really annoying." And for about 2 seconds, I really felt much better. Then, absolute panic. Just 3 feet to my right, I heard the familiar buzz of a text message being received. Except my work best friend didn't sit 3 feet to my right, my manager did. I had sent that text message to my boss. I immediately got up and apologized, and she forgave me, and now we're best friends, right? Wrong. First, I spent 60 seconds brainstorming all of the ways I could possibly absolve myself of any responsibility. In quick succession, my brain ran through the following. 1, surreptitiously tiptoeing into her very open office without her noticing, stealing her phone, hacking into it, and deleting the text message. 2, accidentally dropping her phone in a cup of water, where would the water come from, damaging it, and then buying her a new one, because the price of a new phone seemed to pale in comparison to owning up to my error. 3, lying and saying that I had a friend with the same name as her and I wasn't talking about her at all. 4, telling her my phone had been hacked and it absolutely wasn't me who had sent that text message. 5, claiming temporary insanity, walking into her office, breaking her phone, and finally packing my bags, walking out of the office and taking on a new identity as a French woman in Paris. Then I came back to reality and realized that really I only had one reasonable option. I had to march in there and confess. I must have looked like a crazed animal on the verge of tears. I said something like, "You're going to look at your phone and you're going to see a text message and I shouldn't have sent it and it was unprofessional and I'm really sorry." All in one breathless, maniacal, and crazy sentence. And then I just waited. I naively thought that my honesty would be rewarded with empathy and understanding. Instead, she just stared at me. I had spent months seething about our relationship and I hadn't said anything about it. She was hurt and she didn't hold back in expressing her feelings. I remember leaving that day feeling like there was truly no way I could overcome this moment. However, as with many things that feel like the end of the world, my text faux pas didn't get me fired. I didn't have to move to a new country under an assumed identity. I didn't have a black mark on my resume forever. Instead, I just had to deal with a few weeks of awkwardness that ultimately forced us to be more honest with each other. I learned to speak up more. She learned what was frustrating to me. She never became my favorite manager, but it mostly worked out and we learned to respect each other. Now, I'm not sharing this story with all of you today because it's unique. I'd be willing to bet that most of you are already reliving your worst, "Oops, I sent that message to the wrong person" moment. And for those of you who aren't, I'm sorry, but it's just a matter of time. I'm sharing this story because it is so ubiquitous. In fact, to further showcase just how common this is, I'll share one more example. A colleague of mine recently shared a similar story. Let's call him Sean. 10 years ago, Sean sent a rude email to someone who just happened to be sharing her screen during a meeting with our CEO. In response, the CEO sent packing boxes to Sean's office. You know, the kind that indicate you're supposed to put all your stuff in a box and leave immediately. He let Sean think he was getting fired for approximately 10 minutes before giving him a call to relieve him from his panic. 10 years later, Sean still talks about it as the biggest and most memorable lesson he's ever learned. Hearing Sean's version of this story makes me realize that I had it easy. There were no CEO gifted packing boxes in my case, but just like Sean, there is not a single moment in my career so far that has taught me more than those 5 minutes of help. Each of my takeaways have direct implications for effective collaboration across cultures, time zones, ages, abilities. These are all things that probably sound familiar to all of you who are involved in Rotary. Here's what I walked away with. 1, if you make a mistake, own it immediately. Don't wait for your apology to be perfect. Don't wait for the right moment, just do it. 2, apologies don't have to be accepted. Apologies are an offering. They're not a binding agreement that the recipient is required to accept. I learned this the hard way. I really thought that my honesty alone would be enough to fix everything. Instead, I had to earn my manager's trust and show her through my actions that I was willing to work to build a better relationship. 3, always assume positive intent. If I had assumed my boss was doing her best and that she was trying to help me by providing feedback, how might my behavior have changed? I have to believe I would have been more patient, more likely to speak up directly, and address our differences in a more appropriate manner. I now have a sign on my desk reminding me to assume positive intent in every interaction. And 4, does it really need to go in writing? We're all human, we all have opinions. Sometimes we want to share our opinions even against our best interests and the interests of those around us. However, as we all learned way back in elementary school, sometimes certain things are just better left unsaid, or in my case, unwritten. As members of the Rotary family, you are solving some of the world's biggest problems by building relationships across cultures and continents. You might even say collaborating through relationship building, as the name of this conference suggests. Next time you find yourself struggling with building a relationship, which will happen, or on the verge of saying the thing you know you shouldn't say, I challenge you to do the following. Assume positive intent. Don't send that message. Address concerns with honesty and with empathy. Ultimately, just don't be like me. Thanks, everyone.
But I want to be like you, big sis. Thank you, Lauren, for telling such a relatable story that made us laugh while also having a message related to the importance of working together, even when it gets challenging. Kiran Singh Sirah is president of the International Storytelling Center. Prior to his appointment at ISC, Kiran developed a number of award-winning arts, cultural and human rights programs in cultural centers across the UK and Ireland. Widely recognized for advancing storytelling as a tool for building social empathy and intercultural understanding, he has spoken and led programming at the Library of Congress, the Kennedy Center, the US Senate of Foreign Relations, US State Department, and the Pentagon. Kiran champions his beliefs in the power of human creativity, arts, storytelling, and social justice through his advisory role to UNESCO Scotland and through his service as a Rotary Peace Fellow. In 2017, Sirah was awarded the Champion of Peace recognition at the Rotary International Day ceremony at the United Nations in Geneva. Kiran firmly believes storytelling not only has the power to enrich lives, but it also holds the key to building a conflict-free society. Please join me in warmly welcoming Kiran Singh Sirah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ali. And hello, everybody. Greetings from East Tennessee, or as I like to say, where I now live in East Tennessee in Appalachia. Namaste, y'all. So I want to start with a quick show of hands. How many of you consider yourselves to be storytellers? Great. Well, my name is Kiran Singh Sirah, and I'm the president of our non-profit organization, the International Storytelling Center, based in Jonesboro, Tennessee, which I'm sure some of you may be familiar with. Now, my line of work, I'm inundated with stories all day, every day, and I love it. I believe passionately in the power that stories and storytelling have to bring to peace, tolerance, and understanding to our world. And that is what I want to speak about today. Stories for peace, stories for justice, healing, and as medicine for our community. Now, I've been with the International Storytelling Center since 2013, but my organization's work began just over 40 years ago when a local high school teacher decided to save a dying mountain town by creating an annual storytelling event that he boldly called the National Storytelling Festival. It was a small event, 60 people gathered around the wagon. The stages were hay bales, but there was enough magic there to spark a movement, and something that my predecessor likes to call a storytelling revolution. A storytelling revolution kind of has a ring to it, doesn't it? Well, around the same time, there were less quaint revolutions happening in other parts of the world, and one of them involved my own family. My family were living in Uganda at the time, and in the summer of 1972, 4 years before I was born, there was an announcement on Ugandan public radio by the then dictator Idi Amin. And he declared that all Ugandan Asians, around 50,000 people, had 3 months to leave the country or they'll all be executed. Many fled the borders. My family left for Britain. They couldn't carry much, but what they did have was taken by robbers en route to the airport. Having left behind all their possessions in the tropical heat of East Africa, they arrived in a small English town called Eastbourne in the middle of a British winter, and that's where I was born. Now, for the most part, the vast majority of people were incredibly kind and welcoming to my family, but there were some that were not so welcoming. As an immigrant family, I was the first person of color born in my hometown. There was racism in our small community, but as a kid, that's not how you thought of it. I just knew it was hard to understand why I felt so different. Home was always a safe and familiar space, but whenever I had to leave the house, I felt like I had to be constantly on my guard. It was hard to concentrate at school, and sometimes I ended up causing trouble instead. Now, things started to change for me when my head teacher in a weekly school assembly started to tell stories. Mr. George was an older gentleman. He was white. He wore a tweed jacket and a kind face. He told us folk tales and traditional stories from all over the world, and one of them really spoke to me. It was a story about a prince who gives up his worldly riches, and he goes out into the world, but he takes 2 objects with him, a cup and a toothbrush. And one day he looks out to see a man break a twig from a tree and chewing it to release the juices that would clean his teeth. And he realized he didn't need his toothbrush anymore, so he threw it away. Another day he sees somebody bend double beside a river, cupping their hands together in the shape of a bowl to drink the water. So he threw his cup away, realizing he didn't need that either. Listening to that story, I began to observe the world in a different way. Not only did that story paint a picture of a world beyond what I already knew or understood around me, but it connected me to the idea that perhaps the world provides all the things that we need to live in it. That story helped turn my fear into hope. It made me see the possibilities when before I'd seen the challenges. And it helped me see my own family difficult situation. My parents showing up in an unfamiliar country with nothing but the shirts on their back in a new way. They didn't need material things to connect to new people or have new experiences or to remember the old ones. I began to understand myself, the world, and my place in the world. And I started to see the outlines of the story that I wanted to see in the world and how I could make that happen. Now, fast forward many years now to 2011, and I found myself thinking about Mr. George's Prince again when I left my job in Scotland to become a Rotary Peace Fellow at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. I more or less gave away all my possessions and packed what I could into two small suitcases, but I did pack a toothbrush. I reflected back on my parents' arrival in the UK all those years ago. They couldn't take their personal possessions with them, but they could take their memories and their traditions, and they kept them alive through the stories that they passed on to me. And now here I was doing the same thing. At the University of North Carolina, my focus was on social justice folklore, peace and conflict studies, and storytelling. And after I graduated, I accepted my position at the International Storytelling Center, where I am now. Just a few weeks after that, I was helping to host the 41st Annual National Storytelling Festival. Now, it's not 60 people gathered around some hay bales anymore. Actually, the festival has grown so much that we draw 11,000 people from across the country and around the world, all who converge in Jonesboro for a long weekend of live storytelling. I heard some amazing stories that first weekend. I've heard many more since, but one of them still stands out to me. It was evening, and I joined the crowd in one of our circus-style big top tents to hear a master storyteller named Elizabeth Ellis. And she closed her program with a story about a difficult and divisive time in this nation's history, the Civil War. Her story was about a group of Confederate mothers who were laying flowered wreaths at the gravestones of their fallen sons. But when they saw that the gravestones of fallen Union soldiers were bare, in one powerful act of empathy, they decided to lay wreaths on those graves as well. In a sense, they were able to see the story behind the story. They could look past the day-to-day conflicts of war to recognize those Union soldiers were the sons of women that lived far away. They felt a strong connection to the grieving mothers on the other side of the conflict. And I could see clearly what I already knew in my heart to be true. Stories help us understand one another on a human level. Harnessing the power of storytelling to build a better world is not easy, but I believe it's an idea worth cultivating. In my work, I'm incredibly fortunate to help communities learn how to use story to strengthen their learning. I get to partner with schools, the Smithsonian, NASA. We get to train and mentor young storytellers to present for events such as International Day of Peace at the United Nations HQ in New York City. I even get to train diplomats in Washington, D.C. to break down divisions between groups and lead bipartisan story dialogue at the Senate to ensure we can sow peace and genocide prevention policy into US law. I even get to work with the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, and even Her Majesty the Queen of America, Miss Dolly Parton, to imagine how we can use storytelling as a non-violent communication tool, as an alternative to violent combat, and excite the imagination of young people as young as 5 years old. And why do we do that? We do it because stories matter. And I believe they matter a lot. Let me give you an example. In early 2016, I was asked to lead a workshop for a group of high school students as part of a series of events in Charleston, South Carolina. I was asked to lead this project geared towards fostering dialogue and healing following the tragic events that took place 6 months earlier, when 9 people's lives were violently taken at Mother and Emmanuel Church, a traditionally African-American church. I started that workshop with the same question that I asked all of you. How many of you consider yourselves to be storytellers? Only a few hands went up. But then I asked them to think about what home meant for them, to describe their city, to describe their lives and what matters to them. And by the end of a 3-hour workshop, all of them had a story to tell. And for one soft-spoken student called Chankisha, she decided to tell her story at a local event just a few weeks later. And she did so, she explained, as a sort of response to the way that she sees people that look like her, young and Black, portrayed in the news. She wanted to tell her story so other people would understand her through her own words instead of somebody else's. Now, I think that's huge because it's the process of owning your own story and telling it in a way that makes sense to you, rather than have somebody else tell that story for you. It was also powerful for me as a listener to hear that story, because I think building peace on a larger scale works according to the same set of principles: finding empathy and building a sense of belonging. Storytelling has that power. It has the potential to put the dream, the desire, and the struggle of what it means to be human into words and to make a difference. And like Mr. George's story had taught me as a kid in school all those years ago, you don't even need a toothbrush or a cup, because if you look around you and when you explore and unpack and listen in new ways, we realize the world can provide all the things that you need. Story is our binding force, and we can all use it whenever there is conflict, however large or small, in our world and in our lives. And we can help others too, just by listening. Namaste, and thank you all for listening.
Kiran, thank you so much for emphasizing the importance of storytelling for a more peaceful and harmonious world. Please take a moment to flood the chat with praises for all of our wonderful speakers. Thank you to each and every one of you in the audience for your presence, attention, generous donations to Rotary's Disaster Response Fund, laughter, and maybe even tears. It has been one of my greatest joys to support this session and see it all come together today. As we look forward to tomorrow, we offer a few reminders. All speaker bios can be found on the Ascension Conference website. Feel free to check them out. We will start our program tomorrow beginning promptly at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. The Zoom will open 15 minutes beforehand if you'd like to join early. All Zoom links can be found in your email. Last but not least, thank you again for being here, and we'll see you again soon.